Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Venture Madness. Are you ready? Our presentation this morning. We're going to give people a few minutes to enter into the webinar, and we will get started at right around 9:30. Okay, it's 9:30. Good morning, everyone. Like I said, my name is Donna McCown. I'm the operations manager for the Maricopa SBDC, and we are presenting our webinar, Venture Madness is Coming. Are you ready? Our host today is Tom Fulcher. He's a business analyst with us, and he'll be joined by Lou Farina. Want to do a few little housekeeping issues to give people a few more seconds to get in. We will be taking questions during the presentation, so if you have any questions, please enter them in the Q&A box and not in the chat because they tend to get lost in the chat. I will be putting some links in the chat that Tom is referring to. So with that, we will get started. Take it away, Tom.
Thanks, Donna. Welcome, everybody. We're going to be talking a little bit about Venture Madness today, but if you've been to one of our events before, you know we got to share a little information with you first. So as we look ahead, first, just tell you a little bit about Venture Madness. It's presented by Invest Southwest, and it's in partnership with the Arizona Commerce Authority. It pits the most promising startups against one another in a live pitch, head-to-head type competition. And now they're in more of a groupings, and I'll talk about that a little bit. Firms selected from the competition also benefit from a lot of mentoring and meeting other Arizona leaders in the startup community, and importantly, meeting other entrepreneurs. We'll talk more about that as well. It's open to early stage firms that are demonstrating some proven market traction. And today we're going to talk about tips and insights to help you find success on your journey in Venture Madness. More importantly, our takeaways: a better understanding of the application and process, review of the eligibility requirements, insights on how the applications are evaluated, learn more about the event and the benefits, pick up some additional knowledge perhaps on investors and how they look at these things, and determine if the timing is right for your company. I know I've had a lot of questions, as my colleague Lou has after Startup Week, about this event. So again, I'm Tom Fulcher with Maricopa SBDC Analyst. I've been working part-time with the Maricopa SBDC for, I think, almost 12 years now. I'm part of the capital team and the export team. I also happen to be the Venture Madness Mentor Chair for my third year and part of the selection committee as well. So Maricopa SBDC, the Small Business Development Center, is part of America's SBDC Arizona network. It's also part of course, the nation's network. So SBDCs are all over the country and out in some other areas. We have 17 counselors in Maricopa County. There are 10 SBDC centers in Arizona. And we also have partnerships with the city of Peoria and the Arizona Commerce Authority. We offer no-fee counseling. So, you can establish an ongoing relationship with your SBDC counselor, if you're lucky enough, for example, to have Lou, and he can help guide you through the ins and outs of business ownership and growing your business to further success. We offer a variety of training, such as this program, and in a bit we'll be talking about other training opportunities. And we have a wide range of resources, and I'll touch on those in a little bit. So technical assistance areas that we've been seeing a lot of lately are disaster loan assistance. So if you have been going through a PPP or EIDL or shuttered venue grants or restaurant revitalization fund and any number of other acronyms from the federal government on disaster assistance, we certainly are there to help you as a partner funded by the SBA. We also help with general lender readiness preparation. I know we've worked with everyone from their startup loans to expansion, growth, new property, everything you might imagine. So we're there to help you with that. Financial review and resiliency, marketing assessment and planning, buying and selling a business, your exit strategies. We have an expert in manufacturing. Lou is our expert in technology. And we've talked to technology and commercialization. We have a certified global business professional and some people with great export experience. And of course, we work with our friends at the Procurement Technical Assistance Center in helping with government contracting. Again, everything you need to grow your business, start your business, and continue to expand your business. So some of the technical assistance I referred to, we have Growth Wheel, When you first come in, your council will introduce you to Growth Wheel. You do a 360, kind of establish where are we today. We work with Live Plan, which is a business planning and forecasting tool, make it easy to share with you and share with your counselor so you can really get an effective plan. Profit Sense is an industry standard for understanding how your P&L stacks up or your balance sheet stacks up to others in the industry. SBDC Net and IBIS World are both research tools that can help you get a lot of good data on your market. So before we jump in, Donna is going to launch a poll, and we just kind of want to know a little bit about who's here today. So tell us about your business. Have you ever applied for Venture Madness previously? So I'll stop for a second, get a drink of water, and give you a chance to answer that poll. Donna, I'm not seeing results. Are you?
Yeah, I see them as they come in, and then once I end it, then I will share the results for you. We only have about 4 of you guys that have, or people, sorry, 4 of you that have voted. So I'm going to give about another 20 seconds, and then we'll shut down the poll, and then I can share that with Tom.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. All right, so most of you have not applied yet, and one company has applied. Nobody's applied multiple times. So great, it's good to have that information. I think this particular presentation will be very good for you all today to understand this event a little better. I can tell you that as of 2020, the average winner of, typical winner of Venture Madness programs had applied 3.5 times. So, typically now that number's been going down since the program changed a little bit, but typically it takes a couple times going through this, and each time is a great learning experience. Before I move further though, I introduce myself. I'm going to ask Lou, who's with me here today, to turn on his mic and introduce himself. He's going to be helping me out today with this presentation.
Oh, hi, everyone. Lou Farina from the Maricopa SBDC. I am a business analyst. I focus on technology commercialization, which is basically, companies that have technology bases. I work a lot with early stage capital investing, SBIRs, and this is part. This Venture Madness is really a very critical piece of the ecosystem here with regard to exposure, and Tom will talk more about that, as well as potential funding. And so I'm able to help clients through the application as needed.
Perfect. And Lou is a member of one of the local angel groups, as am I. And Lou also coached one of last year's winners, I know, and a couple before that. And I think I've coached 6 or 7 over the time. So hopefully we bring a little different perspective to you today. So first about today, this is not a typical SBDC webinar. Today's a conversation. We're not going to be sitting here throwing a bunch of slides at you, except of course for the required ones we had to share. But we're going to start with a few facts, review some eligibility terms, and one key rule I want you to be aware of, explain the process a little bit, walk through the application, and a reminder of key dates. And really it's going to be just a bit of a conversation between Lou and I, and then we encourage you to ask your questions anywhere along the way. As Donna shared, please put them in the Q&A tab, not in the chat. And as they come in, Donna will share them with us. So a little different. So join us for this ride. So today, just the forums and sites we're going to be looking at. We're going to look at the Venture Madness website, and I'll have that up in just a moment. We're going to look at Startup Wind. I get that question a lot. It's Startup Wind. It is not Startup Wind, even though for 2 years I think I called it Startup Wine because I didn't know any better. So we're looking at Startup Wind, which is part of this process now. We'll take a quick look at rules and guidelines, terms and conditions, and the process, the application, industries, scoring, and some key dates. So we have a lot of information to share with you today. Go a little quickly because all of this information is available to you online on these key websites that I just mentioned that we'll be looking at. So with that, I will stop sharing this particular screen and possibly. All right. There we go, and start sharing again. Having trouble. Sorry about that. There we go. Always got to be some little problem, right?
Is this where I should start humming some music for you?
There you
The
go.
Jeopardy.
All right. So hopefully, Lou, are you seeing the Venture Madness
I
website?
can.
Perfect.
Yes.
Sorry about that, everybody. So here is the Venture Madness website, and this is where you start. So you go here and you get a lot of information about Venture Madness, how it works, how to apply, key dates, it's some winner success stories. I encourage you to watch some of the videos. They're really good. And in fact, one of the videos you should definitely watch is this one. Lou, does this person look familiar to you?
Yes, that's Shruti. Yes.
So
Last year.
tell us a little bit about, just take a minute, tell us about your journey with Televeda as they went through this process.
Well, so there was the application, of course, but I had gotten to know them before the application went in. So it was really very helpful to have an existing client who is applying. And we went through the application. We talked about some of them. We pulled a lot of information from their existing material because they were a company with really good trajectory here in the local ecosystem. So we were able to pull from their business plan. We were able to pull from, we did some loan applications, some pitch decks, and really it was just really pulling and editing the information to fit kind of the what a Venture Madness application kind of asked for.
Perfect. Thanks. And congratulations again for about the billionth time on their win.
Thank you.
So you'll see a little bit about how it works, some information on how to apply, some of the documents I talked about here, terms and conditions, rules and guidelines. And the application, once you hit submit, I want to highlight that you cannot modify. So once you have submitted your application, it's in. So make sure it's ready to go before you hit that final submit button. Some Tenor Agenda. So again, all this information is there for you and easy to find. So let's go ahead over and just talk, the history of the event. The event started as the Arizona Venture Capital Conference, I think it was. In fact, we might have somebody from the event in our group today. So Donna, if you see anything if you see a Karen mentioning that she's involved, let me know and we might bring her in to make a comment. But then it became, let's see, the Arizona Angel Investor Conference, then it became Invest Southwest, then it became Venture Madness. I got involved about the time as part of the marketing committee with Invest Southwest, we named it that, and been involved for a number of years now. It's grown over time, but it is, as Lou said, one of the premier events, probably the premier event for us here in Arizona, we think, in this angel space and startup tech companies, and it brings 100+ people and investors from around the country. It's getting more and more every year. This year, it's teamed up with a Met conference right afterwards when it happens. So a lot of enthusiastic activity around that. So again, you'll meet other entrepreneurs, past winners, some of the sponsors which are in the ecosystem, and lots of experts and investors at this program. So it's definitely a worthwhile program. One of the questions I get is the goal, is it fundraising? Is that the goal? Well, sort of. It's if you have no interest in fundraising, this will probably be a very awkward process for you because part of this is submitting a deck that's about and meeting investors and telling an investor story. So it is about fundraising, but we'll talk about a few of those caveats in a second. But once you're here, you'll click that button that says apply now, and that'll take you over here to the Startup Wind site. So a little different this time, using Startup Wind as our application portal and scoring. But then you'll be able to complete, sign up an account and complete your application here on this site. So just wanted to highlight that. So let's take a break for a second. And I don't like having to stop share and reshare. So let's see if I can get this to happen correctly this time. All right, so we're going to go over to the process. And Lou, you were just talking about this. So first is the application, and I'll say this a couple of times. Applications are June 3rd at 3 p.m. And 3 p.m. is not 3:01 p.m. So I just want to stress that. There's lots of issues around this. has to be in on time. So Lou, if it's due June 3rd at 3 p.m., what would you tell your clients to submit? June 1st, May 31st? What do you think?
Well, I mean, you don't want to come right up against the deadline. I never like to do that. So be prepared at least a couple days in advance to submit. I mean, that's what I would tell folks. What do you tell them, Tom?
Yeah, I tell them to try to go 2 days ahead and make sure it's on a weekday. Because if you do run into some technical issue, if the site's having a problem or you're having a problem, at least if it's a couple days ahead on a business day, you might be able to reach somebody for some help. So I would
Right.
definitely do that. And then from there, it's going to go into judging. And judges are culled from a lot of experts around the state. And, you know, they review these, they get scored, they meet and make a selection. Then it goes to kickoff, which is an orientation event for presenting company CEOs and founders. And then from there, you go into mentoring. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. You also are grouped at that point. Talk about that. And then the mentoring, we'll give you the key dates in a second. And then we go into the competition. There's a reception and then the actual competition. It is a hybrid event this year. Not everybody will be at the live event, and they're still working through some details on what that looks like. The entrepreneurs will be presenting probably in a studio style setting and probably with some panelists there that are asking questions. And if you're not selected, like I said, typically, I haven't seen the newest numbers, it used to be about 3.5 times the average winner had applied, but you still get feedback. You have the opportunity to meet with people and review your application and scores. You get back a little bit. I don't know if you still get a heat map now with the new scoring system, but you'll get your application back. And then you can sit with some coaches and experts and get some feedback on that application. So that's the process in a nutshell. And I will just go ahead and show you the key dates as well while we're at it. So again, the application deadline, 3 p.m. sharp on June 3rd. Judging takes place pretty rapidly after that. Each application is generally on average reviewed by about 5 judges. So a number of scores, people from a variety of backgrounds. Presenting company orientation, important date if you're going to be pursuing this, mark your calendar for August 5th. Mentoring sessions are August 27th and September 10th. Those are also required. So mark your calendar for that. The reception is October 6th and the event is October 7th. So those are the key dates and we can make sure to send those out. And then let's take a look at the industries because that is also a question.
Hey, Tom, can I just ask? Can I just ask questions? So really, there's the judging. The initial judging is to get into the competition. Once they're in the competition, then there's a judging of the actual presentations. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. So the initial judging is done on paper. And what's different this year, there will not be a video element to your application. The past, there's always been a video portion of this. And I don't know exactly why, perhaps it's the new platform not allowing it. I don't know, but there's no video pitch part of this. It used to be a 3-minute video. This time around, it's just judged on paper. So we're going to look at that application and go through that. And you get scored in different areas. And then the top group are taken. And that's going to be anywhere from 24 to 36 and invited to the actual conference. At the conference, you're broken into groups. I can show you those groupings. So you're broken into categories or groups. For example, you might be in SaaS. One year we had so many SaaS, we had 2 SaaS groups. We had a kind of a SaaS startup and a SaaS growth. And so then, yeah, you present, the 5 or 6 companies in that category present. There's another panel there of 2 or 3 people. They ask questions and they give scores and select a winner for each category. Now, historically, there used to be an overall winner. We no longer do that. So where was your company in, Lou? Were they SaaS?
Yeah, they were SaaS.
Yeah. All right. So we have SaaS. There's no particular criteria here. Deep tech, hardware, Internet of Things, which, as you can see, a whole variety here. And these are, again, all in all the documents and online. It's one of the categories. Institutional tech, fintech, blockchain, cybersecurity, always a very popular area for us. Growth, that's a little different. So growth companies are, generally companies that been there, done that. They've got at least $3 million in sales already. So we put them in kind of their own category. We've had Homey as a winner and a couple others that are, some bigger names that but they're out still raising, capital and doing these types of events. We have a medical category for biotech, healthcare, and life science companies. and a consumer category. And that's more consumer-based tech companies focused on a variety of things. So you get assigned a category, and it happens every once in a while. We get somebody who might say, hey, I don't think the category I'm in is right. What can we do? And that's at the point a lady named Karen Kazorki is the executive director for the program. You'd end up having a conversation with her. I think we have a Q&A in here. What % of applications are accepted? That would be probably an estimate by me. Typically the applications, last year was a little down with COVID, but typically the applications run anywhere from 90 to 140, I think. And so if they select 30, puts you around 25, 30%. All right. So I want to take a look at some quick rules, and sorry for all this fun stuff before we get into the meat, but I think it's important that we highlight a couple things. Company has to complete all 3 components of the application. If you can't do financials yet, application is not for you. You can't just put in blank financials. The date, the president or CEO of the company should attend some events, and the president or CEO of the company is the one expected to present. Exceptions have been made, but they are unusual for that. They're looking for innovative companies. I want to also highlight companies from fashion, restaurant, retailing, distribution, mining, real estate, non-software, bio are not expected to apply. Now, if you come to me and say, well, I'm in the restaurant tech business, hey, that's fine. It's just a matter of, if you're a restaurant, you're not expected to apply. Maybe in one of these categories, you're bringing something unique and different that's a tech thing that you think is innovative. You know what? Reach out to Karen, reach out to the Venture Madness community and say, what do you think? Can I apply? You'll see all the categories we talked about. There is an employee eligibility requirement I want to highlight. You have to have at least 2 full-time employees, average working about 35 hours a week. Now, saying that, they don't have to be paid employees. They can include your founders. Active investors, yes, you got to be careful though. Those active investors can't be on boards of other organizations or full-time employees in other places. So keep that in mind. There are ways to meet that rule. It's for startups, we understand where you're at. I don't think I have anything else in that doc. Take a look real quick at terms and conditions. Only one thing I really want to highlight. So this is where it's unusual. Because of the securities laws and nature of this presentation, we're having a lot of people there and their general disclosure rules, basically, you're not permitted to actually conduct an offering. In other words, you can't make an ask. So none of the materials you present at the program or submit should have an ask or talk about the amount of capital financing you need or the type of structure that your company has, type of securities you're going to offer. So basically the ask is not included. Frankly, it makes it a lot easier and also shortens the presentation time. You're not doing a 10-minute presentation. I think it's going to be six or 7 minutes. Don't quote me on that. I'm not 100% sure yet. So that's the one thing I wanted to highlight and makes this a very different type of program. So more of a business plan competition. So Lou, as you look at programs like this, and they're not making an ask, how does that impact you as you look and think about, if you had your investor hat on or a coach hat, how do you look at that? How does it impact you when you don't see that ask? What becomes more important?
Well, so there's an old saying, right? You ask for money, you get advice, right? And ask for advice, you could get some money down the road. So just because there's not an ask there doesn't mean I would anyway discount the validity or the strength of their business. There's some regulatory reasons why you don't do this. It kind of jeopardizes your status with regard to the SEC exemption. But it's really a good practice for any public presentation. You'll see a lot of what do you call them, demo days and whatnot, that they actually do public asks. And, for those of us who have been here before go, oh my gosh, what are you doing? So this is really a good practice.
Yeah, I've talked to a number of attorneys who even cringed when a startup company puts a investor tab on their website.
Right.
So, they don't even like that. So, keep in mind I think that's the message here that Lou is conveying. There are a lot of securities laws. If you're going to go down this route of raising capital, there are a lot of security laws with which you need to comply. It's very easy to break them. It's very easy to get yourself in trouble, and even to the extent of not being allowed to raise money again. So, after this, if that is still an area that you're interested in, that you think you want to raise money for your company, reach out to us. If you're not a client, reach out to us, submit your request for counseling, and see if either Lou or I could help you and look at that. And of course, Lou also does some excellent workshops on angel investing and kind of what to know about angel investing. So we'd love to work with you on those types of projects in the future. So then you get to the actual application. I highlighted just a few things here because they're important. I did notice a typo in the application. One of the lines is repeated twice. So due by June 3rd, I think I've said that enough times now. Don't change the font size on your application. Don't change the document's margins. Don't alter the format. I chuckled, it said no more than 3 pages of 4. So it is 4 pages. The company profile is the first page, and we'll show you that. And then there's 3 pages that you actually complete as the application. When you're in that, and we'll show you that in a second, you can change the relative sizes of boxes. There may be different lengths based on how much you type. You can also delete the black text or keep them, the subheaders. We'll show you those in a second. There's a specific way you'll see here on how to highlight or how to save your name when it goes in. And plan for at least 30 minutes. So let's look at the information. Okay, company profile. This is the easy page. At least I hope it is. So your company name, who's your contact, company website. Again, there's no 90-second video this year. The founders, I want to know how much hard cash. So none of this, well, I worked 4,000 hours at $200 an hour, so I put $8 million in the business. No, this is hard cash that we're talking about. So hard cash, the companies have put in, and friends and family, and grant funding. Then professional investor equity. So you've had a third-party investor, whether it's ATI, Canyon Angels, Desert Angels, an individual, how much is that? And then if you have bank or investor debt, and then so that totals up your total cash funding. The dollar amount of equity you anticipate needing in the next 18 months. So, okay, didn't I just say you can't make an ask? I did. This is your application for the selection panelist. They're allowed to see this information to have a better understanding of your application and where you fit in your life cycle and ecosystem. As a judge, for example, if I see somebody that needs to raise $2 million and they've put $5,000 in, I scratch my head. It's like, well, aren't you willing to invest in your own business? So some of these things, they may seem innocuous, but they can raise questions in an investor's mind or in a judge's mind in this case. If I see grant funding and I find out you've gotten a couple SBIRs, which, by the way, we have some great SBIR programs, and Lou is doing SBIR evaluation with NSF, and I've had some SBIR success with my clients. That goes a long way towards validation, kind of validates, oh, some scientific experts have looked at this and it makes sense, and maybe there's already a market being built. So this is an important page. And then your other profile questions, affiliated university, accelerator, or incubator. If you don't have one, that's okay. Legal form of the company, that's pretty straightforward. And intellectual property protection, if any. And you don't have to make, try to keep this page just small like it is, but you can say 3 patents, you can say 4 trademarks, whatever it is, you'll get to talk about that more. So this is just a very basic, company profile page. And then as we move in, so this is where we're going to take some time and really kind of go through this a little bit. So brief elevator pitch. Now, historically, I'm going to show you something real quick. This is kind of how things have in the past were scored. We've got a different type of application system now. Doesn't have the weighted scoring as it did in the past, but this gives you an idea of how the scoring used to work. Personally, Lou, I don't know about you, my opinion has always been people. What I see is risk and talent there. where it says 24%. I think to most investors, that is probably a little higher than that, maybe 30% or more. What do you think?
Oh yeah, I mean the team is really important, and the background of the team, the parameters of the team, the coachability, not the main expertise, whether they've had exits before. I mean, all that really. I mean, right. So the other term we bet on the jockey, not the horse, right? A
Yeah.
lot of times. So yeah.
Yeah. So then you see some other areas that were historically fairly even market validation analysis, and we'll talk a little bit about that. Industry attractiveness, are you entering the printed newspaper business or entering ed tech, product and solution itself, the business model. Lou, when someone asks you, hey, they ask me my business model, what are they asking? What do you tell people that means when someone asks that question?
So what do you, I mean, how is this going to be monetized? How is the money exchanged? In my mind, I'm going to do X and Y, and then money is going to come to me for that. That's the basis for me of a business model. You'd be surprised. Some of the tech folks have a hard time with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And you'll see a higher and higher or increasing interest in unit economics as you go through these things. It may be a little less here at this stage of a 2-page application than there will be in the presentation, but unit economics are playing an important part. Financial projections were typically rated low. To me, that seems a little on the low side. And I'm trying to get some clarification on the actual pitch portion of this, exactly how far out someone can look. Presentation quality, always important. While this is we're scoring a written piece right here, so it only gets 3%. And what does that mean? If I got to tell you, if your document is riddled with punctuation errors, grammatical errors, misspellings, in my mind as selection committee, it probably has a bigger than 3% negative impact. I start to question the care what someone took, and a few other things. So professionalism is important there. And the introduction. So, go back to the introduction for a second, just talk about that. So, people tend to overcomplicate their introduction. I was speaking with a company yesterday, and so, well, we do this, and this, and this, and this. And I said, dude, you are way overcomplicating this. It's more of the story, and Lou, help me out with your version of this. It's more of the story of, hey, we help these people who are suffering this or feel this pain, and we solve that. We help them solve that by providing this solution. And it is different than other solutions in the market because of this unique benefit we deliver. I sometimes call it my 5 blanks. We sell blank to solve blank, unlike blank, we blank. Really breaking it down to that customer-centric version of who you are. Lou, what do you think about elevator pitches?
No, I like that, Tom. I really like that. And it's called an elevator pitch for a reason. The term elevator comes from like a 30-second, or 15, 20, 30-second. And when you put that time constraint on it, you have to just hit those high points that, as Tom mentioned. A lot of folks, they want to use all the real estate, and I don't know if there's a word limit here on this particular one, Tom. Is there a?
No, you can actually expand or delete any of these boxes. And by the way, the brief elevator pitch, what I've usually done with my companies is leave that in until you're done, then take it out, just to remember what you're talking about. But yeah, you don't have to leave that part in. As a selection committee member, sometimes it helps when I see it, sometimes it doesn't. So, but if you need the space, take it out.
So sometimes, and less is more for me. I mean, a lot of times I don't like to see an elevator pitch that's way lengthy. It's very hard. Yeah.
So again, you have a little room here. It's written, and so you can put a little more detail in it, something special you do, et cetera. It's fine. But just remember what you're talking about here. This is the idea. I read that. That's interesting. What do they mean by that? Right. So then we go into the market and industry analysis section. So how large is your market? What market segments are you going after, and why? I've got an article somewhere I wrote that's the top 10 pitch mistakes. I interviewed about 30 people on it. And one of them is misidentification of market. Lou, one of my favorites, if I can use that word, is we show you the e-commerce market stats, which are billions and trillions of dollars, it seems like. Yet for them, really, e-commerce is just the method by which they get to market. They're not in the e-commerce industry. What are some of the market errors you see?
Well, like one of the glaring ones is, stating a very large market size and saying, I'm going to take a 0.5% of that market, right? So
Yeah.
you can't, that's not a winning strategy. I mean, this is talking about size of market, but it also talking about segments and how you could segment your market down to an addressable space that you can win in.
Yeah, that's great. So often we see people talk about their TAM, SAM, and SOM, addressable market, and the obtainable market, and kind of breaking it down, walking us through. And yeah, you might be part of this, $20 billion market, and then the segment you're in is really 2 billion, and then what you're looking to obtain is a smaller number somewhere in there. Just think of this partially as that. We always call it the land and expand strategy, right? Where am I going to go? So you want to make sure you've defined the market. If you're giving some data, which you should be, validate the data. Don't take a lot of room. Don't make it a footnote somewhere else. Don't write the entire name of the report out. Just according to IBIS World, done. I need to know you got it from somewhere. I prefer it was maybe in the name of the report, but you do need to validate data, because as a judge, when I'm going through this, if that data is not validated and sourced, it's a negative mark. And so I have to take the score down a little bit. Is the market growing? Same type of thing. How fast? Who's in the market already? What's the nature of the competition? So before we get that, the other part is making sure you've really identified in this market piece, make sure you think about the economic buyer. Lou, one of the things I see a lot is, for example, in education technology, they talk about the students and they talk about the advancements and the successes the students have. And that's great. It's a wonderful passion, reason for being, mission. But it doesn't tell me who's making the decision on purchasing your product. Any thoughts on that area, that economic buyer piece?
No, yeah, I mean, showing how how your product is going to be bought, who the decision makers are, who the influencers are, who the buyers are actually, and who benefits. They're not necessarily all the same people. And if you can map that out and explain that to me, and I know that, that's really good.
Yeah. So again, who's in the market already? Look, you have competition. And anyone who says they don't have competition is saying one of two things. We haven't done our research, or the market is dying or dead. So you have competition. So if you think back to identifying that customer pain point that you're solving for, well, how is that customer solving for that pain point now? Well, they're spending their dollar in 3 different places, and we can give them one place. They're spending their dollar and getting half the solution, but now we can give the entire solution. And not only does it help you identify where the market is and validate the pain, it helps you establish your competitive advantage. So really understand who the direct, indirect, and substitutes are in your competitive analysis. Industry attractiveness factors are market size, market growth, incumbent power. We want a sizing analysis, as Lou said, a segmentation. Perhaps, and some of this overlaps with go-to-market. There's partnerships and channels development. So as we look at the go-to-market plan, who are your customers? Again, we talked about that economic buyer, but really this is the biggest mistake I see here is, here are the 8 markets we're going to go after, to 2 of us with $100,000. So you really need to think through, Lou, don't you think, kind of where are you going to start? I mean, how does someone do that?
Yeah, it takes a lot of thought, and you have to narrow it down, and you're starting to at some point identify where you're going to put your resources, right? This is a question of like resource allocation. Like you said, 2 people can't attack 8 market segments, with limited resources. So now I'm trying to figure out, and you may not be right here, but at least if you can start to identify with some granularity, I think you're in good shape. Now, if you're in a consumer market, you would do a persona maybe, right? you would maybe create a persona. But if it's a B2B market, you wouldn't create a persona, but you'd have to provide some detail.
Yeah, and sometimes having that analogy or customer story can work, especially in the live pitch. Here, you could probably make it work as well. But can you already validate? And honestly, this is a tougher road for people who aren't having a few sales. Excuse me. The exception possibly being in the healthcare technology, where the road to market is much longer. And we see winners in that area who are not actually in market all the time. So describe how you win customers today. One of the best questions I ever saw an investor ask was, how will you win? And that has always stuck with me. And really it's the base question of any pitch. How will you win? So how will you displace incumbents and competitors? How are you better or different than them? What's your channel and partnership strategy? What have you already developed? So you see a lot of questions in here around go-to-market. It seems easy until you try to write it. That's the evil plan, right, of investors. We make you do this 25, 30-page business plan and, spreadsheets with 12 worksheets in them. And now you got to get it all in 2 pages. You got to get your go-to-market plan down to about 150 words. So it is rough. It is rough to go through this process, but that's why we always say we write the business plan before the summary. You write the summary before the application, because you've thought it through, you can start to tell that story. This part's a little easier for most of our applicants, the technical product description and plan. And I'm not going to go every question in here, but a few highlights. Lou, I think technology validation is critically important, don't you?
Yeah, I think it's something that you can do early on. A lot of people, it's easier to validate technology than it is a market, right? So if at least if you're starting there, it's good that you've validated your technology.
Yeah, and again, for this particular competition, it is a competition. So if you've got more technology validation or market validation, you'll do better on scoring. It's different than just presenting to a group of angels or an angel. What are your future validation plans? Don't overlook that you've got risks. And when someone ignores the question about risk, it's a major negative for me as an evaluator. Tell me a couple risks that are logical, that I probably already figured out just reading, and how you plan to address them. Describe your product's advantages. Describe your company's IP. So here's where we get to talk about IP. Describe non-IP barriers. A lot of categories don't allow for IP. So what are those barriers? And yeah, first to market, that's a small barrier, and some others are barriers, but really try to dig in on what barriers might be. The piece I left out of the go-to-market area, I think, was the marketing part of the plan itself. And just make sure when you're explaining it, you don't get a lot of room to explain it in this application, but especially when you get to the pitch, that it's logical. One of the common mistakes I see is as I look at the financials, and we'll look at those in just a second, marketing going down as a % of sales, too extreme, like marketing actually decreasing as sales increase. So risk and talent, I just mentioned that. What risk have you mitigated so far? This is not just about the risk. Lou, to me, this talks about the team, right? The question about risk you've mitigated is really about the team you have, don't you think?
Yeah, no, it shows that if you are able to identify a risk, but then you're able to augment your team to mitigate that risk, because it's all about getting the talent you need to mitigate the risk. That shows a couple of things, right? That you've, one, mitigated the risk, but two, that you have enough awareness to go out and find or build your team accordingly.
So when people ask you to list and describe your key team members, don't list 10 people. This is really your core executive team. And you have a place to also list key advisors, where you might put a key service provider as well. Make sure you address that, but don't overlook any key holes. Like, hey, right now we are using, Lou Farina, CFO services company. And at month 18, we plan, even though we have an account, at month 18, we plan to internalize and hire our own CFO. Whatever that hole might be, recognize it and address your plan for it. So as Lou said, it's the jockey, not the horse, and that's a major part of that section. So the fun part, the financials. Now you'll see, I've not, said in our our actual pitch, there might be more than this, but you'll see we're just looking at a couple things on financials. But pricing and downstream value analysis, this is now in this part. People need to understand your pricing. We're a razor and razor blade model. We buy for every one of these, they buy 4 more a year. What are those? Lou, are there any ratios that you like to see relative to pricing and value?
I couldn't give you one off the top of my head, Tom.
Okay,
honestly.
that's okay.
Yeah.
I would kind of think if there's any I like. I do like, obviously, it's ARPU, average revenue per user. I do like lifetime value. Some of those things.
Yeah.
And those have maybe come down into how the business scales portion of this. When you see the hardest part of this, I'll tell you, this can be very, very difficult, is number of units sold. Sounds like an easy question. But what if you have, we have a service component and we have these 2 products. We have our business model includes you can be a seat basis or you can be a enterprise level. So number of units sold gets very tricky. And notice says you may not be able to fill every box, but perhaps you just talk about number of customers or something else in there. Average selling price, gross margin dollars or percent, and then you'll see revenues. EBITDA, if you're not familiar with it, earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization, cash burn and created, and the amount of funding you're looking at. And it's a pretty basic form, but really using this bottom part is so key. Describe how your business scales. At the top, it's your pricing and downstream value analysis. In other words, well, we sell for $10 and our cost is $3. And so, it's kind of that unit economics piece, right? Or you might talk about competition. Describe how your business scales. It's part of that go-to-market, but this is more the financial side of how your business is scaling, and funding strategy. Describe your funding plans moving forward. What are the funding events you might focus on? How are you going to use this money? So that's the extent of this application. Donna, I see a couple chats. Do we have any questions around the application so far?
No, actually, the chats were just from me to you directly.
Sorry.
So we don't have any more questions right now.
Perfect, thank you. Yeah, I was not opening them just because I'm in the presentation mode at the moment with the screen. All right, so.
Hey, Tom, if I just might add just a little bit
Please.
on this one. So we talked about, if you scroll up a little bit, the pricing downstream value analysis. If you're a SaaS business, and there's a lot of SaaS businesses now, and investors really like SaaS businesses, you've got to describe your business in the context of SaaS metrics, right? Tom, ARPU, CAC, lifetime value, churn. These are all terms that are used in SaaS to describe SaaS. And so you got to be real familiar with that and be able to describe your business in those terms.
Yeah, and again, making a point, we're happy to talk about what those means. There's also a question here about, downstream value and for your partners. I mean, how are you helping them? Are you saving them money? Are you saving them cost? That's an important aspect to this. I remember Digitile, a company that won this, and they talk about the average amount of time spent looking for files, and then they convert that to the dollars and cents basis for a company, say with 100 employees versus what they cost, and really a great downstream value argument. So let's see where we can go from here. I will close that off. And we can just talk a couple more quick questions. So the mentoring process. One of the things that I want to highlight is the mentoring process. Maybe it's self-serving because I'm the mentor chair, so I think it's valuable. But there are some videos on the Venture Madness site that talk about it. They talk to 4 past winners. Every one of them talks about mentoring. The Phoenix Startup Week, couple sessions on this talked about mentoring. So, have your deck ready to go, but that's what the mentoring is for. They will challenge you maybe on your how you explain your business model. They may challenge some actual content, but they're going to make you a better presenter and help you create a better presentation. Lou, you worked with Televata last year. They went through that mentoring process. Did you get any feedback or a feel for how that helped them in the process?
Oh yeah, I think it was really beneficial. They had come in with some mentors, previous, but they were exposed to other mentors that they wouldn't necessarily have met or known, and so they got a different perspective. And then they left with some mentors, right? So after the process, you go through the competition, but now you've established some relationships going forward, and you might be able to continue those relationships. I'm as an SBDC counselor, I always advise my clients to get as many good mentors as you can get.
Okay. Yeah, it's absolutely right. And, a lot of these folks, maybe they're later stage investors, and you're right, raising 250 to 500,000 right now, which is fairly small. They may be wanting to keep an eye on you for when you get to that $2.5 to $5 million range. It's important to start early in this process, establish yourself, show that progress. If you applied before and didn't make it to the competition, your application this year should show progress. If you've got that application and you got that feedback last year, come meet with us. Let's look at that feedback together. Let's make a better application going forward. We can certainly make any of the handouts available to send out, but they are all available already on the Venture Madness site. So everything's there already. Lou, you've been around this competition a couple times, as I have. Do you think, how important are existing sales for this competition?
So I don't think you need to be really in revenue to really shine. Okay, but you need to have a kind of line of sight to revenue. Like, I'm looking at you like, what's 18 months? Can you get there? 12 to 18 months? What does that look like? And so a path to revenue is really important, but I don't think having revenue is critical. And I had just talked to a client yesterday who we had a little debate. He said, I can't find funding because I don't have revenue. And I said, well, that's not necessarily a criteria. That's my opinion.
Yeah, and the one area criteria is, in the growth category.
Right. Yeah. Of course.
You're growing.
Yeah.
So, yes, for those, it is a criteria. If you have revenue, where it comes into play here is market validation and proof of concept, right? It does validate you to a degree. And I think what Lou said is critically important, that you've got maybe a little revenue is great. If you're a ways away from revenue, you've got to be able to demonstrate that path to revenue and get there quickly.
The other thing, Tom, I just might add on revenue is sometimes a little revenue is not a great thing. If you get into revenue too early and then you lose your trajectory, right? So if you got into revenue the first couple of months, now I'm looking at trajectory. Now, if you don't have the right trajectory, that kind of can count against you, right? So you got to be careful.
Yeah. Yeah, one of the things I mentioned in financials, and it's not going to really show up in the application. Like I said, just make sure as you move forward that the financials are internally consistent. If sales are going up, like I said, I've seen areas where sales go up $5 million and marketing goes down $500,000.
Yeah.
Where all of a sudden your average salary is $80,000, and then one year jumps to 120, the next year drops to 60. There's got to be explanations behind some of this stuff. That's, again, stuff we can help you look at. So there are some, kind of common pitfalls there that make sure the math works. Just double check the form, make sure everything worked correctly. I think that's probably
you've changed it looks like the financials are changed from last year, right? They were a little bit backwards last year. It looks like you guys did something to fix them.
Yeah, they are a little better, definitely. Okay. So Lou, last question. How do you see an event like this differing from just talking with angels or applying for angel groups? Where does this fit in that spectrum?
Well, so if you're talking to an angel group, you're talking to the constituency, right? So here you get a broader broader exposure, okay? So you're talking to multiple angel groups because there'll be a lot of angels. Now, it wasn't necessarily an open event the last couple years. Is it closed still?
It is still partially closed, right?
Yeah. So you're going to
get. You are not a competitor. You can't just attend unless you're a sponsor or invited for some other reason.
Right. So majority of what you're going to have in the audience are investors, potential investors, and then the other piece is the VCs, right? So I met a lot of out-of-town VCs who are flying in from different parts of the country to kind of keep an eye on what's going on here. This is the way for them to tap into our ecosystem. And like Tom said, you might not be ready for a VC to start with, but they'll keep an eye on you if they see something they like. So
yeah. definitely. And we'll keep an eye on you too. I mean, Lou and I will see someone good and we'll chase you down and try to make you a client, right, Lou?
Yeah.
But you get on the radar for Arizona Commerce Authority programs. You get on the radar for a lot of programs when you do something like this. So let me get our slideshow back up. We got 5 minutes left. Okay. So as we move forward, Donna, jump in if I miss anything here, but we love to work with you, whether it's on this program or a variety of other programs we've talked about. Just go to MaricopaSBDC.com, as you see the link right there, and request counseling. Keep in mind, all our counseling is by appointment only. Our counseling right now remains virtual, but I'm pleased to say we've had some great success working with clients this way in not only disaster relief, traditional lending, raising capital, growing businesses, all aspects of that, and of course, some business startups as well. So after you complete that request, there's an initial counseling session where you identify business goals and areas of need. Then there's follow-up sessions with the counselor for regular guidance. It's one of the things that truly sets SBDC apart from a lot of organizations where you might get one meeting with an expert. And then, we work with you to track and report on metrics. It's important that we understand how you're doing and help you look at your financial reports, your balance sheets, income statements. It's important to you. It's important to us. It is a source of our funding. So we do share your success, but we share it anonymously. It gets amalgamated with everybody else's success and goes up the line and saying that we accomplished this much as opposed to talking about just you. Occasionally, we like to talk about you. We may nominate you for an award or try to give you some press, and we'll have you sign those releases to do that. So Donna, you said, I got to chat from you. There are a few changes, so I'm going to stop and let you share what's upcoming.
Okay, great, thanks. We do have our second session of the Great Marketing Turnaround that is scheduled for this Thursday, May 13th from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. And then what has been rescheduled is the session 3. We just got that while the webinar was going on. So we have rescheduled that for Thursday, May 27th. So the same date and time. And I just put our link in the chat here. To get the most updated information, always make sure to check our website because that is updated in real time. So session 2 is on May 13th. Session 3 is on May 27th. And then we do have first of a series of Grow with Google webinars on June 15th. And then we have Lou presenting our SBIR overview on June 17th.
Perfect. Thank you, Donna. So again, we've got lots of resources for you. On our page, we have a COVID resources page, our training event calendar that Donna has shared a link for, biographies of all our counselors. You can read all the sordid stories of Lou's past there. And you can follow us on Facebook and LinkedIn to stay current. And thank you for joining us today, but I just want to reemphasize, and then I'll ask Donna to talk about the survey, but I want to reemphasize that we would love to work with you. We'd love to help you, realize your dreams, whether they're funding or just growth or even starting. But if it's in this equity capital space, venture madness, et cetera, I'm on the selection committee and mentor chair, so I have a lot of knowledge of this program. Lou has coached winners. Lou and I are both involved with different angel groups. And we'd love to really help you to look at, is it even right for you? And if it is, how to proceed. And if it's not, what are other options? Lou's developed a lot of expertise in SBIRs. We can help you in lending. We can help you in branding and marketing, all those things. We're here for you. We just love the honor of being able to work with you on that. So Donna, I'll ask you, what's our process for the survey?
So as soon as this webinar is ended, you will be receiving a survey through a third-party Survey Monkey. If you could fill that out, that really helps us in how we formulate what we're going to be presenting in the future. As well as we will be sending out this recording. It will be uploaded to YouTube, and we'll be sending out that link as well as posting the recording on our website. And when you do go to our website, you can see all of our recordings, almost going back a year, that we have available to anyone for your listening pleasure.
Perfect. Thank you, Donna. And we'll make one last call for questions. We got about a minute and a half left. So any questions out there in the process?
No, I don't see any.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us today. Lou, thank you so much for having this conversation with me today. And Donna and Esmeralda, thank you for keeping me straight and this thing running on time. Pleasure to
Yeah.
see everybody. We'll look forward to seeing you at a future event.
Thank you, Tom.